Music producer royalties. Here's how they typically work. Music producers often receive publishing royalties and master royalties for songs that they produce. Generally, the finished song's musical works copyright and publishing royalties are divided 50-50 between the parties that compose the lyrics and the parties that compose the instrumental. These percentages can look different depending on who composed what, whether or not an interpolation or sample was used, and whether there is a publishing company involved. The producer's master royalties are often referred to as producer points and can look different depending on whether the artist they are working with is signed to a record label or is independent. If signed to a major record label, the artist will typically receive a master royalty of 12 to 20%. This royalty is typically considered all in, which means that any points that the producer receives will come out of the artist's share of the royalties. In this scenario, producers typically receive 2 to 4 points, though some producers may receive as much as 8. So let's say the artist receives a 16% all-in royalty. If the producer receives 4 points, then the artist will now only receive 12%. Record labels typically want to own the sound recording copyrights, also referred to as the masters. So the producer may also receive an upfront payment, often referred to as a buyout, in exchange for giving up their share of the ownership of the master. Typically, this buyout may be in the thousands of dollars, and it may or may not be considered in advance. If it is, then it would be recoupable against the producer's master royalty. See my video on record label advances and recoupment for an explanation of how recoupment works. In some cases, the terms of the artist's all-in royalty stipulate that the artist is responsible for paying the producer their royalties. Many producers would prefer to be paid by the record label rather than rely on the artist to do this. In these cases, the producer should ask the artist to send a letter of direction to the record label, informing them to directly pay the producer. The producer should also ask the artist to send a letter of direction to Sound Exchange, informing them to pay the producer their share of the royalties that Sound Exchange collects. When dealing with an independent artist, the producer should not be fooled into thinking that the 2 to 8% norm still applies. When dealing with an independent artist, the producer should typically receive 25 to 50% of the master royalties. Going back to our signed artist example, the producer received 4 out of the 16 all-in points. That's 25%. If the producer received 8 points, then that would be 50%. So since a record label isn't involved with an independent artist, 25 to 50% typically makes more sense than 2 to 8%. If a record label comes along and wants to sign the song, then they'll probably give the artist and producer a smaller pie, but divide it the same way between them, in which case the producer would probably end up with 2 to 8 points. Some may disagree with the producer receiving 25 to 50%. Indie Amplify made a video arguing that producers should receive 10 to 20% because they typically don't pay for the marketing, the music video, the studio time, and often don't have a bigger name than the artist. I would counter with a few points. Producers often spend thousands of dollars buying music equipment and software and years learning how to use it well. Also, a modern producer is akin to an artist's band. The producer is providing the instrumental for the artist to sing or rap over. How fair would it be for Mick Jagger to take 80 to 90% of the Rolling Stones' share of their master royalties and leave the rest of the band members with 10 to 20%? Also, a good song can raise an artist's profile and enable them to make money in ways that they don't have to share with the producer. Money generated from merch, ticket sales, brand deals, and movie and television roles is often not shared with producers. Rihanna's music career helped her launch brands that have reportedly made her a billionaire. How much of the money from those brands was shared with the producers that helped her create those songs? Probably not any. So given those points, I think a producer typically getting 25 to 50% of the master royalties when dealing with an independent artist is fair. Other issues for music producers dealing with independent artists is keeping track of when songs using their instrumentals have been released and getting artists to properly register those songs so that both they and the producer can collect the royalties generated from them. Services like Shazam and Content ID can help a producer detect when a song using their instrumental has been released. If producers understand music royalties and how to collect them, then they could explain that to the artists that they are providing instrumentals for. For example, the producer could include that information in a written beat licensing agreement. This may make it more likely that an artist properly registers the song. This could also open the door to a business model where the producer doesn't charge an upfront license fee to independent artists and instead seeks out independent artists with a matching musical style and offer them instrumentals in exchange for a percentage of the royalties. I made a video that explains how to collect music royalties. In it, I say to sign up with a distributor, Sound Exchange, or a neighboring rights organization if you're outside of the US, a publishing administrator, a PRO, and the MLC. However, you could skip the last two because a proper publishing administrator will sign you up with a PRO in the MLC. So that just leaves 3 companies for a music producer and independent artist to sign up with in order to collect the royalties for a song. I wrote a book, Contract Law and Copyright Law for Musicians, which explains contract law, music copyright law, licensing, and royalties. In addition to U.S. music copyright law, the book also offers a summary of the music copyright laws of Australia, Canada, the EU, India, Nigeria, and the UK, as well as a summary of 10 international agreements related to music copyright, including the Berne Convention, the Rome Convention, and the WIPO Internet Treaties. This may be a useful resource if you are a music producer or artist.